I met Clara at a 4th of July barbecue the summer I turned 28. It was one of those sticky hot evenings where the air smells like charcoal and sunscreen, and everyone's pretending not to melt into their lawn chairs. I wasn't even supposed to be there, a last-minute invite from a college buddy who swore I needed to get out more after working too many weekends. Clara was standing near the grill, laughing with a group of people I didn't recognize, her drink sloshing over the rim of a red plastic cup while she waved her hands animatedly mid-story. I was hooked before I even heard her voice. We got introduced somewhere between burger refills and someone almost lighting a firework too early. She had that kind of energy you don't fake, bright, alive, pulling people into her orbit without even trying. I remember thinking she didn't belong at a random backyard barbecue. She looked like she should have been hosting a gala or walking through a gallery opening in a black dress with a champagne glass. And somehow, she still managed to make it feel like she was exactly where she wanted to be. By the end of the night, we'd swapped numbers, made half a dozen inside jokes, and promised to meet up for coffee that week. I didn't even wait a full 24 hours before texting her. She answered immediately. We moved fast, the good kind of fast. Not reckless, not desperate. Just right. Dinners turned into weekends, weekends turned into meeting families, and within a year, we were standing in front of a tiny courthouse saying our vows with nothing but a handful of close friends and family to witness it. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't the kind of wedding you see on Instagram. But it was ours. Clara had just landed a great job at a rehabilitation center for professional athletes, working as a massage therapist and physical recovery specialist. She loved it, the science of it, the hands-on part, the way she could help people who pushed their bodies to the limit find their way back from injuries. She would come home buzzing some nights, telling me about how a football player's knee had improved ahead of schedule, or how she had figured out a new technique for muscle recovery. Meanwhile, my own career was cruising steady. I ran a small, successful security systems company, installing high-end setups in commercial properties, private estates, luxury businesses. Nothing flashy to talk about at parties, but it paid the bills and gave us breathing room to build the kind of life we wanted. We bought a house not long after, a 2-story place tucked into a quiet neighborhood full of tree-lined streets and neatly trimmed hedges. Big kitchen, open living room, plenty of windows. We filled it with mismatched furniture, second-hand art, the dog we adopted on a whim after seeing her sad face at the shelter. Life felt easy. Simple in the best way. We weren't chasing anything. We already had it. We made plans late at night on the back patio, trips we wanted to take, how many kids we might want someday, whether we should knock out the wall between the kitchen and the dining room to make space for bigger dinners. It felt like everything was in front of us, waiting to be built, one day at a time. Weekends were always something Clara and I looked forward to. They had a rhythm of their own, not lazy exactly, but slow in the best way. Saturday mornings usually started with coffee on the back patio, the dog stretched out in the sun, both of us flipping through our phones and passing headlines back and forth. Sometimes we'd go to the farmer's market. Other weekends, we'd hike a local trail or just cruise through town with the windows down and music up. We liked being around each other. That was the part people noticed most. Friends would make comments at dinner parties or get-togethers about how we actually seem like we like each other, as if that was rare. And maybe it was. But for us, it just felt normal. We moved well together. We had inside jokes, little looks across the room that meant entire conversations, the kind of shorthand couples pick up without trying. Clara was a planner. She had a whiteboard calendar in her office that she updated obsessively, color-coded appointments, weekly meal notes, gym days, reminders for birthdays and vet visits. I used to tease her about it, but secretly, I liked how she kept things moving. It made our life feel structured without being rigid. Her work at the rehab center kept her busy. It was a mix of hands-on therapy, rehab assessments, consultations with physicians, and the occasional shift in the hydro room. The athletes rotated through the facility all year, baseball players in the spring, basketball and football players during their off-seasons, plus the regulars from local college teams. Clara never seemed fazed by any of it. She talked about her clients with the kind of professionalism you hope for in someone who's literally responsible for putting people back together. I never felt weird about it. Not even a little. I trusted her completely, and she made it easy. She was always open about her schedule, told me funny stories about players acting like babies over sore quads or whining about cold compresses. The way she told it, it was all just work. And I believed her. Meanwhile, things on my end were stable. Business was steady, with a few bigger contracts coming in that year from real estate developers expanding into smart security systems. I had a couple of employees I trusted, which meant I could delegate more and be home earlier. We'd eat dinner together most nights. Clara usually cooked. She liked experimenting with new recipes and ordering weird ingredients online, but I'd take over on Fridays. Steak or fish, something on the grill, wine on the counter, music in the background. Our version of unwinding. We'd talk about weekend plans, house projects, TV shows we'd been meaning to catch up on. Clara always had a new documentary to recommend, and I'd pretend to care until she put it on and then somehow get completely sucked into it. Our relationship wasn't loud. It wasn't over the top or dramatic. It was easy, lived in, comfortable in a way that made the rest of the world feel like it was happening somewhere else. We had our space, our routines, and enough quiet between us that neither of us felt like we had to fill it just to prove something. We were in a good place. Everything we built together, and it was great. Summers in our town had their own pace, long, warm evenings where the streets smelled like cut grass and grilled burgers, and weekends stretched out as if no one was in a hurry to be anywhere. Clara loved summer. She spent as much time outside as she could, dragging me along for evening walks around the neighborhood, spontaneous weekend road trips to nowhere, lazy afternoons stretched out on a blanket in the park. Work stayed steady for both of us. Clara's rehabilitation center hit its busiest season with athletes flooding in for off-season training and recovery. She thrived in it, the constant movement, the full schedule, the feeling that she was part of something important. Some days she'd come home still vibrating with energy, tossing her bag down, launching straight into a story about a breakthrough session she had or a new therapy technique she was trying. I liked hearing her talk about it. She made it interesting. Even the dry, technical stuff about muscle groups and recovery timelines became something I wanted to listen to. It was easy to support her because she didn't just talk about work like it was a job. It was her thing. Her passion. And it felt good to see her chasing something that gave her that spark. On my side, things clicked along without much drama. Business was stable. We landed a few larger contracts for commercial security installs, and I spent a few late nights drawing up proposals and finalizing designs, but it never pulled me too far away from home. If anything, it made the time at home sweeter, coming back to find Clara waiting on the porch with 2 glasses of iced tea, the dog curled up at her feet, the radio humming low from the kitchen. We liked having people over. It wasn't formal, no RSVP dinners or meticulously planned parties. Just friends dropping by with bottles of wine or 6-packs of craft beer, throwing burgers on the grill, and letting conversations run late into the night under the patio lights. Clara was always the center of it somehow, not in a flashy way, but in the way she kept things moving, made sure no one ever felt like an outsider. Travel was something we tried to squeeze in between our busy stretches. Quick weekend trips, mostly, a cabin by the lake, a hotel downtown in a city we hadn't explored yet, sometimes just a fancy staycation where we booked a suite across town and played tourists for a couple of days. It didn't matter where we went. What mattered was that it was us, stepping out of our regular world just long enough to breathe a little differently before diving back into it. There was a lot of laughter. A lot of easy, unforced days. Projects around the house, painting the guest room, fixing the deck, arguing good-naturedly over which shade of blue was actually different from the one we'd already used. Future plans floated around in conversation, maybe buy a bigger place in a few years, maybe look at some land outside of town, maybe a second dog once ours settled down a little. Life felt full in a way that didn't demand anything more. Not flashy, not complicated. Just real. And every time I looked around, at the house, the dog sprawled out across the rug, Clara humming some song under her breath in the kitchen, it felt like exactly where I was meant to be. Fall crept in slowly, softening the air and painting the trees in thick streaks of gold and red. Clara loved the change of seasons. She'd swap out the throw pillows in the living room, bring out heavier blankets, and start baking way more than either of us had time to eat. The house always smelled like cinnamon or fresh bread or something roasting in the oven by the time I got home. Work stayed busy for both of us, but it wasn't the frantic kind of busy that wears you down. It was the good kind, steady, productive, something to be proud of. Clara picked up a few private clients for off-site therapy sessions, something the center encouraged as part of its athlete outreach program. She balanced it well, managing her schedule with the kind of precision that had always impressed me. We started thinking a little more seriously about making some upgrades to the house, a remodeled kitchen maybe, a screened-in porch for the back. Clara made mood boards on her laptop, pulling images from design blogs and sending me links late at night while we were curled up on the couch. It wasn't rushed. We weren't chasing deadlines. Just sketching out the next pieces of the life we were already building. Family get-togethers became more regular too. Sunday dinners at her parents' place, casual barbecues with my brother's family, lazy afternoons where half the conversation revolved around football scores and neighborhood gossip. Clara fit into my family like she'd been born into it. My mom adored her. My dad treated her like a daughter from day one. Watching them interact always hit me with a quiet kind of satisfaction I never bothered putting into words. Around town, people knew us as a pair. It wasn't anything formal, but it felt good to walk into a coffee shop and have the barista know our order before we even said it. Or run into someone at the hardware store who would ask, "Hey, where's Clara today?" like it was just assumed we moved together through the world. We did, most of the time. Some weekends, Clara had events through work, fundraisers, awareness events, Charity 5 Burmese Chat sponsored by the athletic programs, and we went to as many as we could. She'd beam when introducing me to her coworkers, always squeezing my hand a little tighter like she was proud to have me there. I'd stand next to her, listening to her talk about sports therapy and recovery timelines like an expert, wondering how I got lucky enough to marry someone so capable, so confident, so alive. There wasn't any strain between us. We gave each other space without needing permission. I had my mornings at the gym, the occasional poker night with friends. She had yoga classes, coffee dates with coworkers, weekends where she buried herself in planning big recovery schedules for new athlete groups. It all blended together into a rhythm that worked, natural, easy. When we talked about the future, it was always with the same tone we used when planning a trip or a renovation, curious, excited, sure of each other. We tossed around ideas about vacations, maybe a long one next summer. Maybe Europe. Maybe a drive up the coast, stopping at all the small towns we always said we'd visit someday. Nothing felt out of reach. Nothing felt heavy. It just felt like living. And every night, locking up the house, switching off the lights, and finding Clara already curled up in bed with a book in her lap, it felt like the world had arranged itself exactly how it was supposed to. The colder months brought a new kind of busy to both our lives. Clara's rehabilitation center started prepping for a big off-season program. Athletes from different teams were scheduled to rotate through for extended therapy sessions, meaning longer days for her, sometimes extra weekend shifts. I didn't mind. I knew how much she loved her work, and I had my own busy season kicking off with new security contracts for commercial properties rushing to finish projects before the holidays. It became our new rhythm, passing each other like ships sometimes, leaving notes on the kitchen counter, quick text check-ins throughout the day. Still, we made time where we could. Wednesday night dinners were non-negotiable. Sunday mornings were ours. Little anchors in the middle of the rushing current. One Wednesday night, we met at our favorite Italian place downtown. Nothing fancy, but it had become ours, the same waiter greeting us, the same little booth near the window, the same shared plate of tiramisu no matter how full we swore we were. Clara was a little late that night, texting me from the car that she got caught up running an errand for work. I didn't think anything of it. When she arrived, she looked flushed from the cold, her cheeks pink, her hair tucked up into a messy bun under her beanie. She smiled that same easy smile and slid into the booth across from me like always. Dinner was good. Conversation bounced from work stories to bad reality shows to Christmas plans. Clara was animated, talking with her hands, laughing easily. She looked happy. She looked like herself. There was no reason to feel anything different. But somewhere in the middle of her story about a new hydrotherapy technique she was learning, I caught a small shift. She mentioned a client by name, casually, in passing, a name I hadn't heard before. Usually, when she talked about her athletes, she kept it generic, this wide receiver, this pitcher, this sprinter. But this time, she used a name, like it was second nature. No big deal. Just a detail. She kept talking, moving on without noticing the way my mind caught on that one small thing. I didn't say anything. No reason to. It was normal to know a client's name. She worked closely with them. Built relationships. That was her job. And it wasn't like she was gushing about him. It was an offhand comment, wrapped inside a bigger story about scheduling headaches and facility upgrades. Still, as we finished dinner and she reached across the table to steal the last bite of tiramisu, there was a tiny flicker of something unfamiliar tucked behind the normalcy. I pushed it aside. There was no sense in reading into nothing. After all, if you start second-guessing the people you trust, where does it even stop? We paid the bill, bundled back into our coats, and walked together down the block to where our cars were parked. She slipped her hand into mine, squeezing it against the chill. We joked about how early it was getting dark now, how fast the year seemed to be flying by. Everything between us felt solid. Real. If there was anything to notice that night, it disappeared into the comfort of routine before I could pin it down. Still, somewhere deep inside, something shifted, too small to name, too quiet to call out. Just enough to make me wonder. The next few weeks blurred together under the usual end-of-year rush. Work picked up speed for both of us, and it felt like every day ended faster than it started. Clara's schedule stayed packed, more than usual. She picked up extra recovery sessions, late assessments, athlete follow-ups, all part of the center's big push to finish the year strong. Most nights she came home exhausted, kicking off her shoes by the door, stretching out on the couch with a deep sigh and her eyes closed. I didn't question it. She had always been proud of her work ethic. She liked staying busy, liked being the one people could depend on when things got hectic. Still, little things started piling up. One evening, she was telling me about a Christmas charity event her center was hosting, some big dinner fundraiser for injured athletes. She mentioned she might have to go, even though she wasn't crazy about the late hours. As she talked, she slipped in that she'd probably be sitting with some of her clients to represent the therapy team, listing a few names casually. That name from dinner popped up again. No emphasis. No weirdness. Just a mention. But it stuck this time. Lodged itself in the back of my mind, rubbing raw against the part of me that wasn't ready to admit anything felt off. I told myself it made sense. She worked with these athletes daily. It wasn't strange to know their names. It wasn't strange for her to be around them in professional settings outside of therapy rooms. In fact, it would have been weird if she wasn't. Still, I started paying more attention without meaning to. I noticed when she got a text and smiled without showing me the screen, not hiding it, just keeping it to herself longer than usual. I noticed when she was quicker to shower after getting home, disappearing upstairs without the usual lazy conversations we used to have while she changed into sweats and kicked around the kitchen. Nothing big. Nothing dramatic. Just small shifts, like furniture moved slightly out of place. One Saturday afternoon, while Clara was out running errands, I went to grab my jacket from the laundry room and spotted her gym bag tossed carelessly in the corner. Normally, she was meticulous about her things. Always unpacked, always reset for the next day. The bag wasn't zipped fully, and through the gap, I could see a small gift bag, the kind of thing you'd get from a boutique or a jewelry shop. It wasn't from anywhere I recognized. I didn't touch it. Didn't dig. I just stood there staring at it, a sharp coil tightening in my chest that I didn't want to acknowledge. Maybe it was from a coworker. Maybe it was for the charity event. Maybe it was nothing. When Clara came home later, cheerful, balancing 2 bags of groceries and chattering about how insane the mall traffic was, I forced myself to push the thought down deep. Smiled, kissed her on the temple, helped her put away the food like everything was normal. Because everything was normal. At least, that's what I told myself. The funny thing about trust is how much energy it takes to maintain it once a crack appears, how you have to shove yourself back into it over and over, hoping you imagined the shift. Hoping it will glue itself back together if you just don't look too closely. I didn't look. Not yet. But the part of me that had started noticing things wasn't going to unsee them. Not anymore. December came in hard, bringing colder nights, packed calendars, and the kind of fatigue that didn't go away after one good sleep. Clara's schedule grew even tighter. Between end-of-year treatment deadlines, holiday coverage at the center, and the fundraiser she kept mentioning, I saw less of her than usual. She still texted often, updates, check-ins, reminders about the dry cleaning, but our time together felt compressed, like we were living parallel instead of overlapping. I tried not to let it get to me. After all, we were both busy. That was part of the life we built, ambition, hustle, things constantly moving. It wasn't new. But something about this stretch felt different, even if I couldn't articulate it. There wasn't any big argument. No dramatic silence. But the space between us had shifted. Not wider, exactly, just less clear. One evening after work, I decided to surprise Clara by picking up her favorite takeout from that Thai place near the old bookstore. We hadn't done a midweek dinner like that in a while, and I figured it'd be a good way to hit reset, eat, talk, laugh a little, just something that felt normal. When I got home, she wasn't there yet. No big deal. I set the food out, poured drinks, even put on the playlist she always used for winding down. 45 minutes later, she walked through the door, coat half buttoned, cheeks red from the cold, smile ready, until she saw the table. She paused. Not in a bad way. Just slightly too long. "Oh, I didn't know we were doing dinner tonight," she said, setting her bag down. I told her I just wanted to do something nice, break the routine. She smiled again, stepped forward, kissed me, and said, "This is really sweet." But something in the air felt off. She ate quickly. Talked about her day. Rushed through a story about a client whose treatment had to be adjusted, something about an athlete not responding well to cold therapy. She didn't say his name. She usually did, lately. After dinner, she said she had to finish up paperwork for the center and disappeared into her office. The door stayed closed. No music played. I sat in the living room with the TV on low, staring at nothing. Later that night, I passed by the office to bring her a cup of tea. The door was ajar. She was at her desk, phone in hand, smiling, not the polite smile she gave coworkers, but a softer, more relaxed expression. I saw her thumb quickly swipe something on the screen before she looked up. "Hey," she said, sitting up straighter. "I didn't hear you coming." I set the mug down beside her and didn't ask anything. I didn't mention the smile or the sudden change in posture. I just told her not to work too late and went to bed. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I wasn't sure what I felt. Not anger. Not even hurt, yet. But something had pulled loose, and I couldn't tuck it back into place the way I had before. My brain kept looping through tiny details I would have ignored a month ago, a new perfume bottle I hadn't seen before. A name repeated one too many times. A shift in her eyes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. It still wasn't anything I could point to. But I didn't need proof to know something was coming. And whatever it was, I wasn't going to miss it this time. The following Saturday, Clara told me she had a full day booked, back-to-back sessions at the center, then helping organize some last-minute details for the athlete fundraiser. She kissed me on the cheek in the morning, tossed her gym bag over her shoulder, and disappeared out the door before I'd even finished my coffee. It sounded plausible. Normal, even. But the knot in my stomach didn't loosen this time. I stayed busy through the morning, running errands, knocking out some paperwork, distracting myself with anything that didn't involve sitting around and wondering where she really was. By the time late afternoon hit, I was restless, pacing the living room, checking my phone more often than I wanted to admit. On a whim, I decided to head downtown. Nothing dramatic. Just to clear my head, maybe grab a drink, maybe catch the last few hours of daylight before the cold locked the town down for the night. I wasn't planning to find anything. I wasn't planning anything at all. Which made it worse when I did. I parked a few streets over from the main strip and wandered toward one of the nicer restaurants, the kind of place Clara and I usually saved for anniversaries or birthdays. The lights glowed warm against the falling dusk, and through the big front windows, I caught a glimpse of a familiar laugh. Clara. At first, I almost smiled, instinctively glad to see her. And then I saw the rest. She wasn't with coworkers. She wasn't setting up a fundraiser. She was seated across from a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, athletic in a way you don't lose after college ball. He was leaning in close, elbows on the table, speaking low enough that she had to lean toward him too, smiling in that easy, effortless way she used to save for me. There was a bottle of wine between them. 2 glasses, half empty. No work folders. No event paperwork. Just them. And the kind of chemistry you don't fake over a work meeting. I stayed across the street, tucked into the shadow of a doorway, my hands shoved deep into my jacket pockets. I watched them talk, watched her laugh and reach across the table to touch his hand briefly, casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. It hit harder than I thought it would. Not like a punch, not sharp and fast, but like slow, spreading ice cracking through your veins. There was no maybe about it. No excuse hovering in the back of my mind. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't bad timing. This was betrayal. And it was sitting right there, behind a wall of glass, dressed up in wine glasses and whispered conversations and smiles she used to reserve for me. I stayed long enough to see them stand up. Long enough to see her slip her arm around his waist as they waited for the check. Long enough to know where the night was headed. I didn't call her. I didn't storm inside. I didn't make a scene. I just turned and started walking back to my truck, the cold biting harder now, sharper against my skin. The part of me that wanted to pretend there was still something to save went silent. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt crystal clear. I sat in the truck for a few minutes after they left the restaurant, watching them disappear down the sidewalk together like they had all the time in the world. My mind was strangely quiet, no racing thoughts, no scrambling for explanations. Just a steady, cold awareness settling into my bones. I pulled out slowly, headlights off, following them from a distance. It wasn't hard. They weren't hiding. They weren't even paying attention. They were wrapped up in each other, leaning close, laughing low as they moved down the street toward the parking lot. She climbed into his SUV like she had done it 100 times before. I followed at a safe distance, staying 2-3 cars back. Through the side streets, past familiar landmarks, closer and closer to home. And when he turned onto our street, I knew. I killed the engine halfway down the block and watched them park. Watched her get out, still smiling, still laughing at something he said. Watched them walk up to my front door, our front door, fingers laced together like they had every right to be there. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. They stood there for a minute, talking low. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the way I used to do without thinking. She leaned into it, resting her forehead against his chest like she belonged there. Then he kissed her. Right there. In front of my house. Not fast. Not guilty. Slow. Familiar. Like it was normal. The world didn't tilt. It didn't explode. It just went very, very still. I stepped out of the truck and walked up the sidewalk calmly, the gravel crunching under my boots louder than any words I could have said. Clara saw me first. Her face froze mid-smile. She jerked back like she'd touched something hot, stumbling a step away from him. The football player, whoever he was, turned slowly, sizing me up like he wasn't sure whether to square up or bolt. He didn't get the chance. I didn't say a word. Didn't throw a punch. Didn't need to. I unlocked the door, yanked it open, and tossed Clara's bag, the one I had packed the second I got home, straight onto the porch. Her coat followed. Her keys hit the ground next, skittering across the concrete. "You don't live here anymore," I said, voice steady. She opened her mouth, to apologize, to lie, to scream, I don't know, but I didn't stay to listen. I closed the door on her mid-syllable and locked it with a final click that felt better than anything I'd imagined. I wasn't finished. The next morning, I sent a carefully worded email to the director of her rehabilitation center, attaching photos I had quietly snapped from the truck, not of anything obscene, just clear evidence of her with a client outside of work, in a setting far beyond professional. The center had strict policies. No personal relationships with clients. No exceptions. Within 48 hours, Clara was suspended pending an investigation. So was the football player, apparently violating both club policies and personal conduct agreements his team took very seriously. Her career. Gone. His playing time. Suspended indefinitely. They didn't just lose a night. They lost everything they built on the backs of lies. And me? I didn't lose a damn thing I wasn't better off without. The silence after everything fell apart was different than the silence before. It wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't waiting to be filled. It just settled. The house was quiet in the mornings now, no more rushed footsteps on the hardwood, no half-full coffee mugs left in the sink. Her perfume no longer lingered in the hallway. The air felt cleaner. Lighter. The emails started coming in 2 days after I sent the report. One from Clara's director at the rehab center. One from the compliance officer at the athletes team. Professional, clipped, and to the point, thanking me for bringing serious conduct violations to their attention, confirming that internal reviews were already underway. I didn't need to follow up. I didn't need to ask what would happen next. I knew exactly what was coming. Clara tried calling me. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that sounded more desperate with each one. There was no apology, not really, just a scramble of excuses and half-hearted attempts to explain what couldn't be explained. I deleted them without listening to the end. She had chosen her version of the truth. She could live in it now. Her job was gone by the end of the week. Not suspended. Terminated. The center issued a statement to staff and partners, citing a clear and deliberate breach of ethics and reaffirming their commitment to professional integrity. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences, finally landing where they were supposed to. Word got out fast. Her name circulated in whispers around town, not from me, but from people who had seen too much, heard enough, connected dots she hadn't bothered to hide. The story traveled from clients to friends to former coworkers. She stopped showing up in public. Stopped posting on social media. The glow she used to carry like armor evaporated overnight. As for the football player, his team benched him immediately. His name disappeared from the lineup. The papers called it a disciplinary suspension pending review. Sports radio vultures tore him apart, debating whether he'd recover in time for the next season. The team's spokesperson gave a vague statement about maintaining discipline and protecting the brand. I didn't have to lift a finger. His fall was faster than hers. I heard from a mutual friend that Clara was staying at a relative's place across town. No job, no income, no car, the SUV had been in my name and was gone the morning after. Her things. Already boxed, already moved out, already done. She was a guest in someone else's life now, trying to explain how she'd lost her own. Meanwhile, I was sleeping better than I had in months. I went back to my routines. My business. My own damn life. I cleaned out the closet, rearranged the office, replaced the photos on the hallway wall with prints I actually liked. Friends invited me out more. Dinners didn't feel like something to rush through. Silence in the evenings felt earned, not tense. There was no pain left to carry. Only clarity. She had broken something and assumed I'd stand still in the rubble. Instead, I walked away without looking back. Part 11 of 11. Winter moved in quickly after everything settled. The air went sharp, and the sky sat lower than usual, thick with gray. The town pulled its coat tight, and so did I. But this year, the cold didn't feel heavy. It felt like fresh air. Like space. The house was mine again. Really mine. Every room had shifted slightly since Clara left. Not physically, the furniture hadn't moved, but the atmosphere had. It no longer felt like I was waiting for someone to walk in, or explain something, or say nothing at all. Now, when I opened the front door, there was only quiet. Not the kind that hides something. The kind that means peace. I didn't rush to fill her absence. I didn't jump into something new or try to prove anything. I just let life be. My own meals. My own mornings. My own space. There was no pressure to be okay, I already was. Not because I forced it. But because I'd already lived through the hardest part and stood on the other side. Friends asked me once if I ever regretted not confronting her more directly. If I wished I'd shouted, made her squirm, forced her to explain what I already knew. The answer was simple, I didn't need her words. I didn't need her to admit anything. The truth doesn't rely on a confession. I saw what I saw. I acted. That was enough. There's power in walking away without asking for anything, not an apology, not a reason, not even closure. The mistake she made was thinking she controlled the story. But she never expected me to flip the script quietly, efficiently, and leave her with nothing to hold on to. That was the difference between us. I built everything we had with intention. She burned it for a thrill. She turned what we built into something cheap and forgettable. But I made sure she remembered how fast it could be taken away. The center never hired her back. The football player faded out of local headlines once the season ended, his name replaced by newer ones with cleaner reputations. I heard he moved cities. I don't know where Clara ended up. I didn't care enough to find out. What mattered was that I moved forward without carrying the wreckage with me. The business did better than ever in the new year. I picked up a couple new clients from referrals I hadn't even expected. Started sleeping through the night. Started waking up without that weight on my chest that I'd been calling exhaustion, but now knew was something else entirely. I made new routines. Saturday morning drives to the bakery on the east side. Sunday coffee out back with no one else to pour for. Weeknights watching movies no one had to agree on. Everything was simpler. Not quieter, not sad, just clean. One evening, months later, I sat on the back porch, dog at my feet, a drink in my hand. The wind picked up just enough to rustle the trees. The sky was still light, the edges of sunset catching the edges of the clouds. And I thought, this is it. Not the end. Not the aftermath. Just the new. Uncomplicated. Unafraid. Mine.